You found your perfect space where you want to do your photography. You found an indoor space, whether it's a studio or a room in your home or whatever it is. Wait a minute, there's something missing here. You don't have any lighting gear. I've got you covered. In this video, I'm going to go over the 5 things you need to get started with an empty space to do indoor photography at a high quality level, whether it's portrait or stock or product. These 5 things will get you started. Let's go over them. Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Hayward here. Today, we're going to talk about day 1, doing indoor photography. Like I said at the top in the intro, you found a space, you've decided that you want to work indoors, whether that's a studio or a room in your home. But now you're going to need to get some lighting, right? It's not just about the space. You need to actually be able to do high quality photography in that space. In this video, I'm going to go over the 5 minimum things you need to get started doing indoor photography of any kind, whether it's product or stock or portraits. Now, I'm going to be talking about photography, not video, meaning I'm not going to be talking about constant lights. And the reason I'm not talking about constant lights is not just because of video. It's actually because of cost. I like working with constant lights. I have worked with constant lights quite a bit in my career. However, to get a large quantity of light with constant lights will cost a little bit of money. And since you're talking about starting a space, I'm assuming that budget's an issue. Heck, budget's an issue for me. So to get a lot of light with constant lights costs a lot of money. So I'm going to be talking about strobes. Don't let that scare you off. I've got a lot of other videos talking about flash photography. It's not hard if you've never done it, but it gives you the most bang for your buck when you're getting started. This is just going to be a list of the items you need to get started in the studio, not a tutorial on how to use them. As always, if you've got questions that you'd like me to answer in a video on using any part of this, if you haven't already looked at some of my videos, definitely just hit me up in the comments. But we're just gonna go through real quick your shopping list, so to speak, of what you need to get started. Item number 1 on your list is your key light. Heck, it might be your only light. This is the one that you've got to allocate a sufficient amount of budget for to get enough light for what you're doing. A lot of beautiful photography can be done with one light. Okay, let's start at the beginning. We're gonna start with the key light. This is the light that does all the work, and I mean all the work. It is your main light. In many cases, it may be your only light. In this case, I am recommending using a strobe, a studio flash. Important features to look for on your strobe is a industry standard mount. This is a Bowens mount. This may be possibly the most compatible mount of many that are out there. Okay, what features do you need to look for on your first studio strobe? Well, most strobes today all work very similar. Very easy to adjust power. You just need to make sure you have enough power, as I said before. I'm recommending to start with an electric unit, and that is strictly for price. You save hundreds of dollars not having that battery on your first light. You also would want a modeling light, and the modeling light, you've got the modeling light that's proportionate to the power, meaning that as you vary this power, the output of the modeling light will also vary, and then you have 100%. Depending on the brightness, you may like to use the 100%. It's a matter of taste. You also need a way to sync the strobe. I'm going to talk about that in great detail in just a bit. Now, this is pretty important. The reason I talk about a mount that is standard is because you're going to need some modifiers for your key light, for any light really, but you probably are going to want more than one to do different things with light. It could be anything from a simple umbrella to a large soft box to a strip box with an egg crate. Could be a lot of things. Again, not going to deep dive into many things like that in this video, other than to say you got to keep that in mind that you're going to need a modifier for the front of that key light. You're probably not going to want to work bare bulb. Next, you're going to need a fill light and or a reflector of some sort, or both. They both have their uses and they can both also be used together. Like everything else, the decision to use a second strobe or a reflector for fill is going to be partly a budgetary decision. If you can afford it, I would always recommend a second strobe because it's a lot more controllable. Having said that, there are times you're going to use both of them. You're going to want a fill light, a reflector. You're going to want a bunch of lights. I'm recommending my tried and true light that I use on location, my AD200 Pro. Everything I said about the key light is also going to apply to this, triggering not so much necessarily a modeling light, but you will need modifiers that you can fit on whatever you're using for a fill light. It's a great little strobe, packs a lot of power. It's battery powered, but this is a budget thing. You'll find that this is a very inexpensive option that puts out a good bit of light for the price. Now, when you want to get a reflector, I'm going to go ahead and recommend a 5-in-1 system. A 5-in-1 system is a reflector system that has multiple sides. In this case, you have white, gold. Inside, if I unzip this, is silver. You have black, which you can also use, and you have this diffuser all in one system. Moving on, next you need to think about something called an edge light, a hair light, a separation light. You're going to hear a lot of terms like that as you go through your lighting career. They mean similar but related things. It depends kind of on the kind of photography you're doing. If it's product, it's often called an edge light. If it's portrait, it's often called a hair light. The idea is that it needs to be an angular light that creates separation from a background or texture or an edge. Again, depending on what you're shooting. Once again, you're going to need another piece of lighting kit for this, especially if you went the reflector route for your fill light. You got a couple of options. To start out, it can be fairly small. I'm going to go back to my guy here again, my AD200 Pro, or you can actually use a speed light. The only trick with the speed light is you may not have the modifiers you need. So here's what I'm talking about. With the AD200 Pro, you can get a modifier like this, a grid. It just snaps on the front and you've got highly directional light, again, to create separation or texture. If you're shooting product, you're gonna put it along the edge of the product to show a highlight away from camera. Or if you're shooting portraits, it's gonna go up here somewhere to separate the head from the background. Not gonna get too much further than that into it. This is one of those lights that really sets your work apart from an amateur, right? A separation or an edge light or a hair light, that's when you can do something like that, you've stepped up. You're no longer shooting amateur photography when you can do that right. I've talked a lot about lighting so far, but you're gonna need a way to fire those lights to trigger them from your camera. You're gonna need a triggering system. You can go old school, something that's external that plugs with a cable. It's called a dumb system because all it does is just fire the light. You can't change the power or anything like that. Most of the lighting recommendations I've shown so far have a built-in radio system where you can vary the power from your camera position. I highly recommend getting a trigger system like that. The Godox system has that. The Profoto system has that. Many lighting manufacturers do that now. And the radios that are built in are really good. It just will save so much time in your life if you're at camera position and you can just change the power of all your lights. You really want to go this way. So I'm going to recommend that whatever lighting system you use one with an internal lighting trigger system that allows you to make power changes or to do automatic flash, whatever it may be. When you can do it from the camera position, it's a real lifesaver. Oh, one more big thing. Hey, you've got all the equipment you need. You've got your lights, you've got your reflectors, you've got your modifiers. Guess what? You're going to need something to hold them on. You're going to need some stands for those modifiers and reflectors. You're going to need more than one of those too. And don't skimp too much. I know they're expensive, but you really don't want lights falling. If you do stock or product or tabletop, you're going to need something to put it on. This is probably the simplest version of that. And if you shoot people, you're going to need something for them to sit on occasionally. Again, this is kind of like a bare bones minimum. It'll get the job done, but especially doing product or stock, you're probably going to want a little bit better than that table. Don't underestimate all this. A lot of people spend all their money and realize that they don't have what they need to actually do the job. Well, there's your whirlwind tour of the 5 basic things you need to get started doing studio photography, and those are very basic things, as you can see. The sky's the limit. If there are things about this that you have questions on, please hit me up in the comments. I would love to answer your questions or do more videos about it. If you've enjoyed this video, would you mind giving the channel a subscription and a like for the video? It really helps the channel. Until the next video, thank you so much. Cheers.